So, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. My name's Natalie Whittlesey. I'm a director at the In Group and InX. So InX is part of the In Group that's put this survey together. And I probably know quite a few of you through my connections because I've sort of been in the technology leadership headhunting and events and thought leadership and data and insights and all of that sort of stuff for my sins, probably about 25 years. I know I don't look old enough, but so I probably know a lot of you. Really pleased you could join us today to hear about these survey results. What's going to happen is I'll go through what the survey is and why we did it in a second. Talk through the main insights that we found from the survey, which was about 7 main points. Then we're going to deep dive into general theme that's come through, and a couple of my colleagues from our consulting arm, Gordon and Rachel, will introduce themselves and kick it off, and then hopefully we'll get some insights and questions and comments and ideas from you as well for this. So what I'm going to do is attempt, and I have had my technology malfunctioning earlier, but I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Bear with me. Can you see the screen?
Well, I can, Nat, so.
You can?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. I'm going to hope that's the same for everyone. So hopefully you can see the screen there. So this is a survey that's called The View from the Top. The reason it's called that is because it's a technology survey with a difference. We know that there are a lot of technology surveys out there. This one was, I've sort of spent my career recruiting technology leaders and talking to them a lot. And what I felt that technology leaders really wanted to know was what their peers in the board thought about technology, and perhaps where the differences were between the technology's view of technology strategy, priorities, etc., and where their bosses or their peers. So of course we're trying to get CEOs to share their ideas around technology, CFOs, COOs, and just see what sort of themes were coming through. So I think my technology leaders want to hear about this. I'll create a survey. So that's what we're talking about today. Just sharing the results with you from this. So as I said, it's about getting different perspectives from across the board on technology, strategy and themes, rather than just getting the views of the technologists themselves. Because we felt there might be some interesting insights, and indeed there were. So we engaged with 120 technology and business leaders to provide a rounded view of technology. And they were from lots of companies, from lots of industries, from large multinationals. Over 60% were actually what I put in the large category, to small scale-ups, and from all sorts of sectors, because we as a business cover a lot of sectors. Most had the C-level technology title, but a sort of large minority of them also had CEO, CFO, COO, which was how we could get that rounded view and compare and contrast. So we asked lots of questions on various subjects, as you can see there: technology, digital priorities, team working patterns, strengths of technology leaders, and more. So what we thought we would do is go through the key findings with you. We'll also, at the very end, because you've kindly joined this webinar and given us your email address, etc., we'll send you a copy of the survey itself. The survey is a lot more detailed than this webinar, so it's 50 odd pages long, and has all sorts of hints and tips and ideas in the survey as well. So we share that with you afterwards. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I can still hear there are people joining us as well. So hopefully that gives you a view of what we're going to do today and go through. So From an insights perspective, there are 7 insights that I wanted to go through today, and then we'll deep dive into the big theme. Oh, sorry, excuse the slight little overview about us. It will honestly take a few seconds, I promise. I'm not going to sell to you, but I'm part of InX. InX is the executive search and interim management specialist arm in the In Group. So we hire leaders. It can be all sorts of leaders, technology leaders, but all sorts of other business leaders as well. So if you ever want to recommend us or use us yourselves, obviously please do. We also have a sister company called Investigo, which is a specialist recruitment business. So that business would find your teams, your specialist team members. We've got a sister company called Definia, which are technology and transformation consulting arm, and they can also deliver pieces of work for you on an outcome-based model. And indeed, Gordon and Rachel that are on the call as well are from there. They've got fantastic backgrounds as leaders themselves. And Karafi, which is our talent acquisition consulting arm. So they will go into HR leaders and people leaders and help them with their, attraction, employee value proposition, all of that sort of stuff. So that's us as a group. We're a talent group. So for the insights, the first one was the prominence of the technology leader. So what you'll see on each of these slides is a bit of a statement, some bullet points to back it up, and then a little infographic. It's nothing amazingly out of the ordinary, but the first one is about the prominence of the technology leader. So I'm often talking to people about titles. So what should we call our technology leader? What should I call myself as a technology leader? And we've really seen this proliferation of titles over the last few years. And there seems to be trends and cycles in titles as well. So someone might one day call themselves a CIO and then think, oh, I think the zeitgeist of the moment is that I really need to be called a CTO. And then suddenly loads of people are talking about digital and data and they think, oh, maybe I should be called CDTO. And there's all sorts of these different titles. What we're really focusing on here is who's on the board in technology, who's the number one in technology, whether that's information, innovation, technology, data, digital. There's a whole range of titles. And my recommendation is if any of you are hiring or even looking for your next career move, is really look under the lid of that title, because you just don't know what it means. CIO can mean CTO in some companies and vice versa. Still, the main title that's used at the top is CIO, with 75% of companies that we consulted using that title. 2/3 of the people that we surveyed have got a C-level technology leader on the board. This is a huge difference to several years ago when it was probably 20-30% were on the board, and it really signals, as Dan says there, my colleague, that you can see there on the slide, it really signals this move of technology leaders being incredibly important to businesses. Businesses are, even businesses that you wouldn't categorize as technology businesses are calling themselves technology businesses these days. Technology is so fundamental to all organizations across all sectors that technology leaders are now more than ever on the board. And if they're not on the board, you have to ask why. And that's testament to people like the leaders on this call who've really fought that battle to get themselves on that board. Over half are reporting to the CEO. And whenever I talk to a technology leader who's looking for a new role, they always want that CEO reporting line, because it really signals to them that technology is super important, that it can add huge value to a business, that it's going to have impact, etc. The rest are reporting still to that CFO, COO. But I remember 5-10 years ago, it was very equal. It was a third, a third, a third. So it's great to see that people are moving up onto the board and to that CEO reporting line. So the second point is technology leaders have had to cope with a lot over the last few years, and business leaders have too. They've had to cope with Brexit and issues with supply chain. They've had to cope with the Ukraine war and the implications there. They've had to, really importantly, cope with COVID. And the general message from the board is absolutely brilliant at responding and adapting and being agile. You know, no fault whatsoever. Really, when something happens, technology leaders step up. However, what the board would like to see more of is a bit more proactivity rather than excellent reactivity. So what they mean by that is, and when I speak to board members myself, they say this as well, is that they'd like to see the technology leader really preempting and foreseeing things that are coming around the corner and then handling them, rather than the board preempting or seeing things, or in fact a business completely missing something that blindsides them, and then reacting brilliantly. And I guess being ahead of trends, being future focused, understanding the challenges that are out there will really give the board a huge level of comfort if you can get that right. Now, of course, we're painting this picture, and you'll see this through all of the insights actually, of this technology leader that has to be almost superhuman to cope with the amount of expectations that they have on their shoulders. But this was one of the trends that came through from the survey. So the third one is about a technology leader as a commercial innovator. So if you think about the technology leader and how it's changed over the last 10 or 15 years, was a lot more sort of corporate focused. You know, do we have the right robust systems and infrastructure? Is it secure? Is it reliable? Can the business operate? And then much more, you know, over the last 5 or 10 years, perhaps longer, it's been continuously focused on, actually, it's not just about that, it's also about how can we engage with our customers more effectively? How can we reach new markets? How can we release new products? How can we do stuff that's innovative and revenue generating? So by the time you get to C-level now, you absolutely have to be 50% or even less technology and digital focused, and 50% business and commercially focused or more. We're still getting this feel that the areas that the boards want the technology leader to focus on are activities that drive growth rather than activities that drive efficiencies or cut costs. So this is despite economic headwinds. We only did this survey in the last few months, when things started to wobble, and everyone was still saying to us, on the whole, they're focused on revenue generating and commercial activities rather than cutting investment and looking at you know, efficiencies and all of that sort of stuff. Sorry, I'm blabbering on a little bit here, but only 7% of boards were prioritizing cutting technology investment. So there's really this important point around stepping up as a technology leader, and I'm sure many of you are already doing this, and really thinking broadly about the business. And that means you have to lift your head up and out of the detail, and you have to have a fantastic team beneath you that can really help you to step up and out and think about that stuff we were talking about previously, future focus, getting ahead of trends, you know, having an eye on what's coming around the corner, and also how you're going to reach new customers, release new products, go into new markets, etc. So this is really important. And again, it's this sort of superpower thing, isn't it, that technology leaders need to have. Diversity, insight 4. There are 7 insights in total. So diversity is insight 4. Everyone's been talking about gender for a long time, because in technology there's this huge disproportionate, you know, male female divide, not divide, but male and female disparity, I guess. And still 67% are saying that gender is the diversity characteristic that they're most focused on increasing. So only 9% of our respondents identified as female. I think, remember though, again, we were purely looking at that top, you know, board level technology leader. There's a little bit of difference between boards and tech leaders on how happy they are with diversity. Not much, but a bit. So only 23% of tech leaders are happy with the diversity within their teams. 27% of boards generally are happy with diversity in their teams. What we have seen, though, that's interesting is ethnicity, physical ability, neurodivergence, all coming up through the ranks. And our clients are talking to us a lot more about this as well, not just about gender. And this doesn't seem to be about just reaching more talent and engaging with a wider variety of talent. It seems to be about doing the right thing. And we've seen, I did a Jedi session. God, this sounds like I'm an absolute crazy person, but I did a Jedi session for the water cooler, the CIO water cooler networking group, all about how motivations have changed a few months ago. And I think talent within business, whether it's technology or whether it's other areas, they're much more bothered about values alignment and purpose alignment these days. People just care about feeling good about what they do and doing the right thing more than they did a few years ago. And I think COVID has had a big impact on that, with people really reevaluating their lives. So I think this focus, not just on gender, but ethnicity, physical ability, neurodivergence, is about people wanting to do the right thing, as well as, really embracing as much talent as they possibly can as well. Insight 5, so visionary versus practical. Again, it's one of the themes that sort of all loop together nicely about how on earth do you be this superhero as a tech leader and get all this stuff done. But this was one of the most interesting insights for me of the whole thing, that the whole survey. The difference between what tech leaders think the board's priority are and what the board's priorities actually are is quite interesting. So if you ask technology leaders what they think their boards are most interested in hearing about, they'll say cybersecurity. It's really important to our board. They absolutely, first and foremost, want to make sure we're secure as a business. If you speak to the boards about what they would most like to hear about, they say artificial intelligence. What impact is artificial intelligence going to have on our business? Everyone's talking about it. We've got ChatGPT. I was at golf the other day, or having dinner with someone the other day. They were talking about how they're using it for their business. And as a board member, I don't want to be blindsided. I don't want to be left behind. I want my technology leader to be talking to me about artificial intelligence. Because in fact, boards think cybersecurity is covered. My technology leader's got that. I don't need to worry about cybersecurity. Corporate technology, it's covered. Actually, where they're most worried about not being covered is things like product creation. And if we go back to the commercial CIO that they want someone that can be revenue generating, release new products, but they're least confident in the technology leader's ability to do that. But what they want to hear about is AI. And things like machine learning and all of this innovative stuff that their friends are talking to them about. Now, of course, the technology leaders that we speak to will say, hold on a minute, what are they talking about? They want to hear about AI. We haven't even got our data sorted out. And I'm sure Gordon will talk about this shortly. But we haven't even got the basics sorted out yet. So how can we talk to them about AI? But I think what the board wants is to know that you have it, you have it on your mind, whether it's short, medium, or long term, and that you have a path to get there and start trialing things and doing perhaps some small pilots. And if you don't talk to them about it, guess what? They'll contact someone like me and say, my technology leader isn't talking to me about this future focused innovative stuff. Can you find me someone who will? So I think it's a really great message for you all to say, just make sure you're having, even though the business might not be ready for it yet, just make sure you're having these conversations with your boards. Insight 6, the art of flexible working. So of course, we've been through COVID. We're all remote working now, or sort of hybrid working. There's a bit of a difference between what technology leaders expect of their teams and what the broader board expects of their teams. The broader board would like their people back in, 20% of them would like their people back in the office 4 or 5 days a week in pre-pandemic style. Only 4% of technology leaders want that. And they're fighting hard to protect their technology talent from having to do that. So what this is telling us is that technology leaders understand that if they force their talent to come back into the office 4 or 5 days a week, or even 2 or 3 days a week, they will lose their talent and they won't be able to attract new talent, because we've already got an issue that technology talent is, really sought after. And if you start imposing unnecessary working arrangements and don't allow that flexibility, you will lose and not retain people. So I think I've spoken to technology leaders who said they've gone toe to toe with the rest of their board on this, when the board has said, I want to increase the days that people are back in the office, and have had to argue hard on why they can't do that in tech and digital and data and transformation. Of course, most common still is 2 to 3 days in the office. That tends to be pretty common. But the other thing, just to mention, is please don't say that flexible working is a benefit to people, because people do not see it as a benefit. They see it as absolute standard, and that's what that is what it should be these days. Final one is all about talent. So where are the most hard to find skill sets? Data science is the hardest to find for our tech leaders, cybersecurity second, and software development and engineering third. I don't think there'll be any major surprises there from you all. Of course, there's my colleague Matt saying, hey, if you need data people, come and talk to me, because I'm the leader of Investigator's data team. But, it's certainly, and if you think about things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of these things that really rely on amazing data, you can't do any of that without getting that sorted. So, it kind of all links together. So in the report, which I will share with you afterwards, you will see all sorts of things. As I said, it's much more detailed than the insights I've just gone through with you. And of course, this is us. Let me stop sharing this. So thank you. I hope I didn't bore you all to death by going through all that. I just wanted to introduce now my colleagues, Gordon and Rachel, just to say a little hello and explain who they are. And then we're going to have this larger discussion, which I will set up for you. I'm just going to set it up first, guys, and then I'll get you to introduce yourself. So there seems to be a picture emerging, particularly from 3 of the insights that we had there, about boards wanting technologies leaders to be proactive, future focused, commercially aware, growth orientated, ahead of trends and innovation to accelerate a business forwards. I guess the challenge for tech leaders, regardless of title, is how do you balance these demanding needs of the boards with BAU, the shorter term activities, the programs, the projects, all of the stuff that you've got on the short to medium horizon. And how do you educate the board on, you can't really do the cool stuff until you've sorted out some of the fundamentals and made sure that they're in place. So I wondered, Gordon and Rachel, if you could introduce yourselves and perhaps give your thoughts on these. Who would like to go first?
Rachel?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rachel Hayes. I'm the Transformation Director of Definio. I joined the business in January this year. I've got 20 years experience in digital projects and programs, primarily in the project program management space, change management space. I've been on an IT leadership team for about the last 8-9 years now, reporting directly to several CIOs. So I've seen all of the insights that Natalie has kindly shared with us. I think for me, Natalie already said the main thing: get a really good team underneath you, because in order to be outwardly focusing and commercially focusing that time and space, and knowing that the day-to-day is being run in an effective way, is really important. In terms of communicating to the board, something I've seen work really well before is a technology radar. That kind of look like a radar going off with, this is where we are now, this is the next 3 to 5 years, this is what we need to get in place in order to get these components working. So it was almost a roadmap. It was a really clever way of illustrating it. And then from that, you can then explain ChatGPT, AI, whatever it might be for your business, and why it's important, but also the steps you need to go through in order to get there.
Brilliant. Gordon?
Hi, Gordon McMullen. I'm a managing partner at Definia. I'm pleased to see some familiar faces, some of whom I know and some I've actually worked with. So yeah, 28 years in industry, worked at every technology demonstrable role, the last 8 or 9 C-level affairs organizations. So welcome everyone. Okay, I only tackle all 3 because I think all 3 are rightly grouped together: responsive, not proactive; commercial innovator; visionary versus practical. So let's think about that. So Rachel mentioned the team. I think for me, the team for the CIO, or whoever the tech leader is on the board, should have known the board, is not their technology team. Their team is actually the rest of the board members, the CMOs, the CFOs, the CROs, etc. Typically because they have the separate business growth budgets, typically more so than the CIO. He has a budget that's very much looking 80% on keeping the operation, the business running, with one of his remits is to try and increase the funding pool he has for true innovation, for keeping on the edge. So that's why it's really vital that the CIOs or the tech leader starts to consider his peers as part of his team, because they have the budget. He also needs to start using their language. So quite often for innovation, the things around what's driving data science, what's driving a lot of the product development, is coming from things around campaigns, is coming from their product leaders and their service leaders. So being able to converse with them, and I find a very successful board meeting when I have one, if I don't mention any tech at all. It's when I'm talking the language of the CMO, the CFO, etc., about what they need to achieve, and then use their investment portfolio as the vehicle through which I can actually start to draw in to bring another synergy from Rachel, that roadmap. Because yes, we're all dealing with legacy, and yes, only the CIOs and tech leads really understand what that means. And our job is not to educate the board about the challenges with that. It's more about how we can actually have them, that split between keeping the operations running. And I would also say from the commercial side, I've spoken to many board leaders that even if I could give you tech for free, you're still going out of business if you're not growing the business. So the conversations all around the business, your team is your board members. Everyone else behind you, you should have, don't get me wrong, you need the right first line underneath you around operations and around delivery. But for me, if you start speaking to and have that relationship at a business level with the peers on the board, use their language, actually start to show how you can hit this phrase, but agile pilots, innovation hubs, all that, to start bringing the pockets to show where new innovation is actually applicable, new technology is applicable, which gets us down to the last one: visionary versus practical. So that to me is pretty much self-explanatory. AI is a massive topic. I get asked about this all the time. Like big data was 8, 9 years ago, like around integration and services thinking was 5, 6 years before that. And what the business want to understand is, are they going to be leapfrogged by a startup, by another organization that's going to be able to release faster, quicker, something more relevant and cheaper? And so they are very, very valid discussions to show actually how you can implement pockets of that, what it means to the business. More importantly, it's the business interpretation of technology that the CIO is actually really grounded in. So that is, well, how is that innovation applicable for my business now, but also what are competitors likely to do with this, and where can we find pockets where it's actually already being used and a proven model. So 3 takeaways: yeah, your team is your board. They've got the money, they're speaking the right language, and they've got the real drivers behind the business. Secondly, absolutely, from a commercial perspective, building on that, supplement your goals are twofold. One, to use their investment and their investment vehicles to be able to deliver a lot of the rigor and the remit that you need, both from an innovation and operation side. And secondly, to, once you go on that roadmap, the percentile which you can actually command to do true innovation as opposed to operation should much favor the innovations. And then lastly, visionary versus practical is absolutely inbred in our job, that we have to keep on the pulse of not just what the technology is coming out there, but how it's being used and what it means to the business. That's me. Let's talk.
It's a lot though, isn't it? It's a lot to be all over. And I think when you're running away trying to deliver the short to medium term and you're already feeling stretched and in pain, and then you're getting these extra demands of, yeah, tell me about this, tell me about that, blah, blah, blah. It's tough. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share in terms of a question, or even I did this with the board, or I've started implementing, bringing this into what I do weekly or monthly to tackle one of these themes at all for the rest of the group? Or yeah, Andy, Rebecca, I don't know if we can maybe take Andy off mute so that he can speak.
Should be good.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Yep.
can hear you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Andy Foster, late of Jaguar Land Rover. One of the things I noticed talking to various boards of late is the stuff that you do, the background stuff, whether it's security or your environment or your, to be truthful, the board don't care. It's then that you just need to get on with quietly. All the other stuff you've talked about today, the visionary v practical, proactive and diverse thinking in particular, which does have a link back to flexible working. That's what they want to hear about. That supports what Rachel and Gordon said and came out in the report. As soon as you start talking about your server arrays or your interface technologies or your storage problems, they just switch off. They're just not interested in that. And to get to the place where you're a successful voice at that board level, you need to be much more into that other space that doesn't talk about technology in a way, which Gordon, you just said. I agree with a lot of what's been said.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. I think you're absolutely right. Talk their language. What do they want to hear about? Even sometimes if you want to get your technology message across, you have to pose it in commercial or business terms and almost be that interpreter, don't you, between tech and the language of the board, I guess, to make it relevant.
So now just to add to something Andy said there. Now, the CIO, the tech leader, is in a unique position because all the other board members will typically have one or two remits of what they need to do. The CIO is one of the few on the board who actually has a remit that crosses everyone because of the dependencies on the back end technology. So typically a business case for an introduction of new technology won't just be relevant for one board member or one business area, but multiple. So therefore, the CIO, from a commercial acumen perspective, has to be able to effectively communicate how actually putting in a more holistic solution around one aspect and how that can drop will actually have profound effects in multiple areas. Now, that's the cultural challenge that the CIOs, that's where the EQ comes in, that they've really got to get a hold of. So it's the case of, it's not only about being able to effectively translate in business speak what technology can do for them, but it's to actually know the business strategy and the business investment portfolio better than the guys who are actually delivering those programs themselves. And so it's that aspect about really getting in bed and very close with the peers around them to understand why what they're doing and how this all ties in a rich picture. That's the unique communication, and that's from that really fruitful discussions can have. And by the way, all of that should not involve technology unless it's areas like Andy's just mentioned there, artificial intelligence, data science, software development. This is all about releasing products in the digital world, which is the vast majority of what we're seeing, but also sustainability and everything that's really attractive in the market, which then goes back into the back end office. So that's another unique aspect of being successful and be able to have the being seen to be commercially aware, being seen to being able to be proactive with the business. It's actually understanding that portfolio likelihood better than anyone else.
And it's why it's so important to be on the board as well, isn't it? Because if you're on the
Absolutely.
board and you're having those discussions with those business leaders and you're aware of what the business priorities and objectives are, you can tie that into everything that you're doing. And I guess that's the same for everyone who's at that board level, but without having that access. And even if you're not on the board, having regular access to the board to understand that strategy and what's coming around the corner and what's worrying people and where the ambition is and all of that sort of stuff is super important. Do we have anyone else who would like to make any comments or come up with any ideas at all that they'd like to share? Anything that's worked for them?
I mean,
We
why
have
would we?
a shy bunch.
I was So connected
Yeah,
to
so
what
I
you
say,
said,
I mean, it's the elephant in the room is what we've discussed is around where does that person sit in the board. So there's three patterns that I see talking to clients. One is they're on the board, great, the remit's there, they can form their relationships and they've got the voice. So happy days, that's the most advanced and that's really where we want to be. The second is where you're not on the board at all. And so therefore, let's be honest, the board will be listening to, you know, the big consultancies and seeking external assistance to drive that in all likelihood, in which case that you'll be inheriting and saying, why aren't we doing these things? The third is where you report directly, and that person doesn't even report into someone directly on the board, by the way. So the next one is you're not on the board, but you report into someone on the board. And I would say the vast majority we see would be split between 1 and 3, either on the board or they report to someone on the board. That's the norm these days, and that's a really healthy position to be in. I would say where they're reporting into someone in the board, it's typically the CFO. And more increasingly the CMO. We're seeing things like the CDO, which is either Chief Data Officer or Chief Digital Officer, more increasingly sit on the board. And I say in those instances, I think that's even harder where you report into someone on the board. It's actually even harder than not reporting to anyone on the board, because getting your voice beyond security, being able to talk about really true business related stuff can actually be exceedingly difficult, because if you report to CFO, it's all about what's your unit cost. How are we going to drive that down? It is about efficiencies.
Luckily, that's going down. Like we saw in the first insight, that 58% of people are reporting into the CEO, thankfully, whereas it used to be a lot higher into the CFO and all about cost control, didn't it? Rachel, were you going to say something then?
Yeah, my observation with the last couple of CIOs I've worked with is that they have been doing those things. I think it boils down to the relationships with the other board members and influencing and communicating that, because they're all, from what I've seen, they're almost ahead of most of the board members in that space, because they have seen it coming and they do know what that means for the business. It's just how that's communicated effectively and how they almost win over those people and bring them along in that vision as well. So it is very much a clear storytelling element to it as well. I understand your well, because I think in some parts, some organizations, technology is still, whilst they might be on the board or reporting into the board, it is still a service function, whereas obviously that's not what we're hearing from CIOs. That's not what they want from the technology function at all. But I think other board members need some persuading along that journey.
Brilliant, thank you. We've only got a few more minutes. I wanted to, before we finish, to say to the people on this call, we would like to do more of these and help you as technology leaders to get insights, get data, learn, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And I guess the question would be for you, what would you like to hear about? If we get the right people around the table, what would you like to hear about? So it could be about a bit more of a deep dive into artificial intelligence, its implications on a business, for example, and how you get there. It could be about diversity. It could be about sustainability. I know that helping organizations to reach net zero through technology is a hot topic. It could be about the metaverse. You know, what do you, is there anything that, it could be none of those things. And I guess I'd really like to hear, what would you like us to bring to you as our technology leadership community in when it comes to insights and thought leadership? And if there's anything you can pop in the chat or send me a note afterwards, that would be fantastic. So we have a comment here. Andreas has said, in my experience, as you've highlighted, reporting into the CFO is the least useful. Yeah, a lot of our technology leaders say that. CEO is the most useful as they drive the direction of the business rather than worry about the money. Absolutely, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, someone wants to hear about sustainability, metaverse, and Rebecca, our marketing leader, is going to send out a feedback form afterwards so that you can share your ideas and comments, which would be fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca.
Nat, we've got a hand up from Philip.
Brilliant.
Philip, you got a question or you want to say something?
We might need Rebecca to take, that's it. Yeah. You might need to knock yourself off mute, Philip. I think Rebecca's,
there you go.
That's it. There you go.
Okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Listen, thanks very much, Rachel and Gordon. what you shared is resonates with me greatly. In terms of Natalie moving forward, you asked what we could kind of focus on. I would welcome maybe soft skills. And what I mean by that is that Gordon and Rachel, you talked about influencing and communicating with your peers or at the board. Sometimes that's easier said than done, and that's what I mean by soft skills. Is there any insights that you can share so we can appreciate it and educate ourselves in terms of those soft skills? Because I've literally just finished up with a sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East, where the maturity of my peers and board members isn't similar or at the same standard as you would in Europe, and therefore the ability to communicate and influence has significantly greater challenges in terms of cross-functional investment, cross-functional work in trying to driving that product innovation and revenue growth opportunities.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. And when I'm taking a brief from a board for a technology or digital or whatever it is leader, they always talk about the softer skills, ability to influence, ability to have credibility. You know, when we're interviewing people, it's as fundamental as the technology transformation, etc. evidence that's back in the career of the person. And some people will be able to make that transition, and some people won't. You know, or some people will be able to do it more easily than others, I guess, is probably more the point. I also talk to technology leaders who've learned to be incredibly a peer extrovert. And then when I talk to them about it, they say, oh, I'm an introvert. I've really had to work on this extroversion and this ability to connect and engage and build relationships and all of this sort of stuff. So I absolutely know that people can navigate that and can grow and develop. But it's a really, really good one, Philip. So thank you for that. We'll definitely add that to the list as well. We have a few other sustainability, metaverse, digital twins, fantastic. So I think this was supposed to be 45 minutes and we're just getting to that 45 minutes. So yay, we're on time. So thank you ever so much, everyone that's joined us today. And thank you to Rachel and Gordon for your time and sharing your brilliant insights. If anyone wants to any more information, just let me know. And we should be able to get a copy of the detailed brochure out to you all so that you can have a little look through that. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Nat. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.